The stars had always called too. Even as a child, he would sit on the roof of his family's small house and look up at the night sky. He would wonder what secrets those distant lights held. Now, 40 years later, he stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, humanity's first ship capable of traveling faster than light. Today, they would finally answer the question that had haunted their species for thousands of years. Were they alone in the universe? "Captain, all systems are ready," said Minu from his station. The engineer's voice was steady, but could see the excitement in his eyes. They had worked together for 15 years and knew that Minu had dreamed of this moment just as much as he had. Stood at the science station, her fingers moving across the controls with practiced ease. She was the person had ever met, but there was a sadness in her that never quite went away. Her brother had died in the accident that destroyed humanity's first experimental drive. She had dedicated her life to making sure his death meant something. "The drive is stable," reported. "We are ready to jump." In the communication seat, bounced with barely contained energy. She was the youngest member of the crew, only 26 years old, but she had earned her place through pure talent. Her optimism was infectious, and was glad to have her aboard for this historic moment. "Earth Command confirms we are clear to proceed," announced. "The whole planet is watching, Captain." Took a deep breath. 8 billion people were holding their breath with him. He looked at his crew, the 4 people who had trained for 5 years for this single moment. "Take us out," he said. The horizon's edge jumped. For a moment there was nothing. No sound, no light, no sensation at all. Then reality snapped back into place and found himself looking at a field of stars he had never seen before. They were light years from Earth in the blink of an eye. "Jump successful," said, her voice filled with wonder. "We are approximately 12 light years from Earth." The bridge erupted in cheers. Minu let out a whoop of joy, was crying and laughing at the same time, even allowed herself a small smile. But celebration died in his throat. Something was wrong. The stars ahead of them were not normal. They seemed to shimmer and bend as if seen through old glass. "What am I looking at?" Smile faded as she studied her instruments. I don't know. There is some kind of energy field ahead of us. It extends in all directions. Captain, it completely surrounds our solar system." "Like a wall?" Minu asked. "Like a cage," whispered. The field stretched as far as their instruments could detect. It was invisible to the naked eye from Earth, hidden among the stars. But from out here, it was impossible to miss. Someone had built a barrier around their entire solar system. "That is not natural," said. "Someone put that there." Captain's voice was sharp with alarm. "I am detecting a ship. It just appeared out of nowhere. It is big, much bigger than us." A vessel emerged from the distortion of faster-than-light travel. It was unlike anything had ever seen. Organic curves mixed with sharp angles, lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was clearly not made by human hands. "We found them," Minu breathed, "or they found us." His mind raced. This was first contact. Everything humanity did in the next few minutes would shape the future of their species. He had to be careful. He had to be diplomatic. "Open a channel, all frequencies. Send a greeting in every language we have." His hands flew across her console. "Channel open, message sending." They waited. The alien ship hung in space, unmoving. Then, without warning, it turned and fled. Its engines flared with impossible brightness, and it vanished into the void. Did they just run away?" Minu asked. "They were afraid of us," said slowly. "A species that can travel between stars was afraid of us. Did not understand. Humanity had just achieved interstellar travel. They were newcomers to the cosmic stage. Why would anyone fear them?" "I am picking up more ships," reported. Her voice had lost its earlier excitement. Now she sounded scared. "Dozens of them. They are appearing all around us, but they are keeping their distance." The filled with vessels of every shape and size. Some were elegant and graceful, others were brutal and industrial, but they all shared one thing in common. None of them came closer than 1,000,000 kilometers. They are talking to each other, said. I am intercepting their communications. Give me a moment to run them through the translator. The minutes stretched like hours. The alien fleet watched them like wolves watching a strange new predator enter their territory. Finally, looked up, her face pale. I have something. It is being broadcast on emergency frequencies across all ships. The same message, translated into hundreds of languages. What does it say? Asked. Swallowed hard. The sealed ones have awakened. Repeat. The sealed ones have awakened. All vessels are to maintain distance and report to Conquered Command immediately. Do not engage. Do not approach. The sealed ones have awakened. Silence fell on the bridge. Looked at his crew, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. Sealed ones, Minu said. What does that mean? I think it means us, replied quietly. I think they are talking about humanity. Stared at the barrier that surrounded their solar system, a cage built around Earth, a prison for an entire species, and somehow they had broken out. Keep monitoring their communications. I want every scanner we have pointed at that barrier. I want to know who built it and why. Minu, keep the engines ready. We may need to run. As his crew worked, noticed something in the data stream from the alien communications. A file buried deep in their emergency broadcast. It was old, very old, and it was meant for human eyes. Can you decode this? Worked for several minutes. When she finally opened the file, all color drained from her face. Captain, you need to see this. They displayed an image. It showed Earth, their beautiful blue, circled in red. Below it was a symbol that the translator struggled with. Finally, it produced a result that makes blood run cold. Extinction class threat, he read aloud. They think we are an extinction class threat. Around them, the alien fleet maintained its distance, watching, waiting, terrified of what had just escaped from the cage they had built 10,000 years ago. And somewhere in the depths of space, old powers were stirring, powers that had hoped humanity would stay sealed away forever. The age of isolation was over, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days passed since the horizon's edge broke through the barrier. 3 days of silence from the alien fleet that surrounded them. 3 days of waiting for something to happen. Paced the bridge like a caged animal. The pilot was not a patient man. He had served in Earth's military for 20 years before joining the exploration program. He trusted his instincts, and his instincts told him they were in danger. We should leave, he said for the 100th time. Go back through the barrier, report to Earth, let them send a proper fleet. And tell them what? Asked. That aliens exist and they are afraid of us. We need answers, we need to know why. With respect, Captain, I do not care why. I care about keeping this crew alive. Before could respond, raised her hand. Captain, I am receiving a transmission. It is directed at us specifically. Someone wants to talk. The flickered to life, showing a face that was almost human but not quite. The being had skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with soft blue light. When it spoke, its voice was old and tired. I am ambassador of the Galactic Conquered. I have been chosen to speak with you because I am one of the few who remembers. I invite your captain to meet with me aboard the station called Threshold. You have my word that no harm will come to you. The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent. It is a trap, said immediately. Maybe, agreed, but it is also our only chance to learn the truth. You are with me. You have command until I return. The shuttle ride to Threshold took 2 hours. The station was massive, a city floating in space. Thousands of ships from dozens of species docked at its ports, but noticed that they gave the human shuttle a wide path. Nobody wanted to get close. Ambassador met them in a chamber at the station's heart. He was tall and thin, his movements slow and careful like those of a very old man. Guards surrounded him, but they kept their weapons pointed at the floor. "Thank you for coming," said. "Please sit, we have much to discuss." "Let us start with the obvious question," said. "Why is there a barrier around our solar system?" Sighed, it was a very human sound. "Because 10,000 years ago, the Galactic Concord built it. We sealed your species away from the rest of the universe." "Why?" asked. Her voice was calm but could see her hands shaking. "Because we had no choice. Because if we did not, there would be no galaxy left." Waved his hand and the chamber's walls came alive with images. Ships, thousands of ships locked in brutal combat, planets burning, stations torn apart, and in the middle of it all, vessels that recognized instantly. They were human. "This was the war," said. "Your people called it the expansion. We called it the end of everything." The images showed human fleets cutting through alien armadas like they were made of paper. Human soldiers fighting on alien worlds with weapons that seemed impossible. Human commanders who adapted to every tactic thrown at them. "Your ancestors were discovered by the conquered roughly 11,000 years ago," explained. "At the time, you were a primitive species. You had not even developed basic space travel, but you learned fast, too fast. Within a century, you had built ships that matched our own. Within 2 centuries, you had surpassed us." "That is impossible," said. "It takes thousands of years to develop that kind of technology." "For any other species, yes, but your people are different. When you face a challenge, you do not just overcome it, you become something more. Your scientists worked without sleep. Your engineers built things that broke every law of physics we knew. Your soldiers fought with a fury we had never seen." The images changed. They showed conquered leaders gathering in this very chamber, their faces filled with fear. "We united against you, all 12 species of the conquered. We put aside centuries of conflict to fight a single enemy, humanity." "And we lost," another voice said. Nodded slowly. "Battle after battle, world after world, your fleets were unstoppable, your people were relentless. For 40 years we fought, and for 40 years we lost." Stared at the images of destruction. This was his species, his ancestors. They had nearly destroyed an entire galaxy. "But the war ended," he said. "We are still here, you are still here. What happened?" His ancient eyes met his. "Your leaders asked us to stop." "What?" "Your commanders, your scientists, your people. They came to us and begged us to seal them away. They said they had discovered something about themselves, something terrible. They said that if the war continued, humanity would become something that could never be stopped." Leaned forward. "What did they discover?" "I do not know the full truth. Only a few people ever did, and they are all long dead. But I know what they told us. They said that humanity carried something inside them, a potential for destruction that went beyond anything physical. The more you fought, the more dangerous you became, not just because of your weapons, because of what your species was becoming." Stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is insane. You are telling us our ancestors asked to be imprisoned." "They chose it," said firmly. "They chose to seal themselves away rather than risk what they might become. They erased their own history. They allowed themselves to forget. They hoped that starting over would break the cycle of violence." Thought of Earth. 8 billion people who believed they were alone in the universe. 8 billion people who had no idea that their ancestors had once nearly conquered the galaxy. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked. Stood and walked to the window. Outside, the alien fleet still maintained its distance from the human shuttle. "Because the barrier was never supposed to be permanent. Your ancestors said that one day humanity might be ready to rejoin the galaxy. They left instructions. If you ever broke through on your own, we were to give you a chance to prove that you had changed. And if we have not?" Turned to face him. For a moment, saw not an alien ambassador but a tired old man who had lived through horrors he could barely imagine. Then we will do what we should have done 10,000 years ago. We will destroy your species before you destroy everything else. But I hope it does not come to that, Captain. I have spent my long life studying your people. I have seen your art, your music, your capacity for kindness. I believe you can be more than what your ancestors were. The meeting ended. As they walked back to their shuttle, grabbed arm. Captain, do you believe him? Looked at the alien faces watching them from every corner of the station. Fear. That was what he saw in their eyes. Pure, primal fear. I believe that something happened 10,000 years ago that terrified an entire galaxy. And I believe we need to find out what our ancestors were so afraid of becoming. Was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If our ancestors asked to be locked away, they must have had a good reason. Maybe some secrets should stay buried. But even as he said it, they all knew that was impossible. Humanity had broken free. The truth was out there, waiting to be found, and for better or worse, they had to find it. The real question was whether they would like what they discovered. The archive of endings floated at the edge of known space, far from any star or planet. It was ancient beyond measure, a massive structure of dark metal and strange crystals that seemed to drink in the light around it. Ambassador had given them its location with great hesitation. The records of your war were sealed there, he had said. If you want answers, that is where you will find them. But I warn you, Captain, some truths are better left unknown. Had ignored the warning. He needed to understand what humanity had been, what they might become again. The horizon's edge docked at the archive's only port. The station was silent and cold, its halls empty of life. As the crew stepped aboard, their footsteps echoed through corridors that had not heard a sound in. "This place gives me chills," whispered. "Stay alert," ordered. "We do not know what security measures might still be active." They moved through the archive in careful formation. Minyu carried a scanner, searching for any sign of the records they needed. Walked beside him, her eyes studying the strange symbols carved into the walls. A noise made them freeze. Footsteps, soft and measured, coming from somewhere ahead. "You should not be here." The voice came from the shadows. A figure emerged, tall and thin, wrapped in robes that seemed to shift and flow like water. Its face was hidden, but 2 points of pale light glowed where its eyes should be. "I am the keeper," the figure said. "I have guarded this place since before your species learned to walk upright. You are not welcome here, children of war." Stepped forward. "We need to know the truth about our ancestors, please. We have a right to know our own history." The keeper was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer. "A right, yes, perhaps you do, but rights come with responsibilities. Are you prepared to carry the weight of what you will learn?" "We have to try," said. "We cannot move forward without understanding our past." The keeper studied her with its strange glowing eyes. Then it nodded slowly. "Very well, follow me, but know this. What you see cannot be unseen. What you learn cannot be unlearned." The keeper led them deep into the archive, through halls filled with sealed containers and darkened screens. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the station's heart. In its center stood a pillar of light, surrounded by hundreds of floating crystals. "These are the memories of the war," the keeper said. "Records from every species that fought against you, and records from humanity itself, preserved by those who chose to end the conflict." "Show us," said. The crystals began to glow. Images filled the chamber, surrounding them on all sides. Gasped. Minyu swore under his breath. Even, who had seen combat on 3 different worlds, looked shaken. The first images showed the early days of the war. Human ships, crude and simple compared to conquered vessels, attacking alien outposts. They were outmatched. They should have lost. But they did not lose. Each battle made them stronger. Each defeat taught them something new. Within months, their ships had improved. Within years, they had become equal to the conquered's best. "Watch closely," the keeper said. This is what frightened the galaxy. The images showed human scientists working around the clock, their faces hollow with exhaustion, but their eyes burning with determination. They invented new weapons in weeks. They solved problems that had puzzled the conquered for centuries. They adapted to every challenge thrown at them with impossible speed. Our scientists studied your people during the war, the keeper explained. They found something they could not explain. When humans faced extinction, something changed in them. Their minds worked faster. Their bodies became stronger. Their creativity increased beyond any biological explanation. Evolution, whispered. We were evolving in real time. More than that, your species has a trait that no other species possesses. When pushed to the edge, you do not simply survive. You transform. You become whatever you need to be to overcome the threat. The images changed. They showed conquered leaders gathered around a table, their faces pale with terror. One of them was speaking, pointing to charts and graphs that could not understand. They realized that the longer the war continued, the more dangerous humanity would become, the keeper translated. If it went on another century, your species would be unstoppable. Another millennium, and you would be something beyond their comprehension. They calculated that there was no scenario where the conquered won. Given enough time, humanity would always find a way. Shook his head. That is not possible, we are just people. You are not just people, you are something ancient, something that should not exist. A new set of images appeared. These were human records. They showed a gathering of human leaders, military commanders, and scientists. At the head of the table sat a woman with tired eyes and gray hair. She was speaking, and her words appeared as text beside her image. We have seen what we are becoming, she said. The conquered scientists showed us the data. Our evolution is accelerating. Our aggression is increasing. Our empathy is decreasing. If this continues, we will not just defeat our enemies. We will destroy everything, including ourselves. Another leader stood. Then what do you propose? Surrender. No, something more permanent. The woman's voice was heavy with grief. We must seal ourselves away. We must forget what we have become. We must start over and hope that next time we will be better. The images showed the construction of the barrier. Human engineers worked alongside conquered scientists, building the cage that would hold their species for 10,000 years. And through it all, that woman watched, her face a mask of sorrow. She was your leader, the keeper said. Her name has been lost to time, but she made the decision that saved the galaxy. She chose imprisonment over destruction. Was crying silently, put a hand on her shoulder but could find no words of comfort. There is one more thing, the keeper said. A file that was sealed beyond even my clearance. Your science officer found it in the archive's database. Wiped her eyes and pulled up her scanner. Yes, coordinates and a single word, origin. I do not know what it means, the keeper admitted. But the coordinates point to Earth, to something buried deep beneath your planet's surface. Whatever your ancestors were afraid of, whatever made them choose this path, the answer lies there. Looked at his crew. They were exhausted and shaken, but he also saw determination in their eyes. They had come this far, they could not stop now. Thank you for showing us this, he said to the keeper. Do not thank me yet, child of war. You have learned what your ancestors did. Now you must discover why, and I fear that truth will be far more terrible than anything you have seen today. As they returned to their ship, walked beside. Captain, do you think we can be different, better than what they showed us? Thought about the images, the evolution, the transformation, the terrible potential that slept within every human being. I do not know, he admitted, but I think we have to try. That woman, our ancestor, she believed it was possible. She sealed us away to give us a chance. We owe it to her to prove she was right. The horizon's edge departed the archive and set course for Earth. Somewhere beneath there, a secret waited, a secret that had been buried for longer than human memory. and had a feeling that when they found it, nothing would ever be the same again. Earth looked different now, stood at the viewport of the horizon's edge, watching his grow larger as they approached. The blue oceans and green continents were the same as they had always been. But knowing what he knew now, knowing what slept beneath the surface, the planet seemed darker somehow, more mysterious. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth Command," reported. "They want us to land immediately. The United Council is waiting." The council chamber in Geneva was packed with leaders from every nation on Earth. They had watched the data transmissions from the horizon's edge with growing disbelief. Now they wanted answers. General stood at the head of the table. He was a hard man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He had commanded Earth's military for 15 years, and he did not like what he was hearing. "Let me understand this correctly," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You are telling us that our ancestors were galactic conquerors, that they nearly destroyed a dozen alien species, and that they asked to be imprisoned rather than continue." "That is correct," replied. "And you expect us to believe this based on alien records and ancient footage?" Stepped forward. "The records are authentic, General. I have them using every method available to us. Our ancestors were at war with the galaxy, and they were winning." The chamber erupted in shouting. Some leaders demanded more proof. Others called the entire thing a hoax. A few sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had learned. Raised his hand and the room fell quiet. "Even if this is true, what does it change? The war ended 10,000 years ago. Whatever our ancestors did, we are not responsible for it." "There is more," said. "The coordinates we found in the archive point to something buried beneath the Pacific Ocean. Whatever our ancestors were afraid of, the answer is there." His face hardened. "No, this information is now classified at the highest level. You and your crew will submit to debriefing. There will be no expeditions, no investigations. The public cannot know about this." "General, with respect, hiding the truth will not make it go away." "I did not ask for your opinion, Captain. You are dismissed." That night and his crew were confined to their quarters. Armed guards stood outside their doors, had made his decision. The truth would be buried just as their ancestors had wanted, but had other plans. She waited until midnight, then slipped through the ventilation system. Years of medical training had taught her the layout of every building she worked in. She made her way to the communications center and sent a single encrypted message. 2 hours later, a young woman arrived at the military base. Her name was, and she was an archaeologist who had spent her career studying anomalies beneath the ocean floor. She had been laughed at by her colleagues, dismissed as a conspiracy theorist, but she had never stopped believing that something was down there. "I got your message," whispered as she met in the shadows. "You said you had proof." "More than proof, we have coordinates, the exact location of whatever is buried down there." His eyes widened. "I have been searching for years. My instruments detected something massive beneath the Pacific, but I could never pinpoint it. If what you are saying is true." "It is true, but we need to move fast. The military will not let us investigate officially." They freed the rest of the crew. Minu hotwired a transport vehicle, knocked out 2 guards who got in their way. Within an hour, they were speeding toward the coast. Led them to a small research vessel she had been using for her unauthorized expeditions. It was old and cramped, but it had the equipment they needed to dive deep. "The coordinates point to a location in the trench," explained as they sailed into open water. 11,000 meters below the surface. Whatever is down there, it has been hidden in the deepest part of the ocean. The descent took hours. The pressure outside the submarine was crushing. One wrong move, one crack in the hull, and they would be dead in seconds. But they pressed on. At 9,000 meters, their lights caught something in the darkness. A wall, smooth and black, stretching in both directions as far as they could see. That is not natural, Minyu breathed. They followed the wall until they found an opening. A doorway, massive and ancient, carved with symbols that recognized from the archive. This was built by humans, she said, our ancestors, but these structures predate any known human civilization by millions of years. That is impossible, said. Humans have only existed for a few 100,000 years. Shook her head slowly. Unless everything we know about our history is wrong. They docked the submarine and stepped into the ancient complex. The air was stale but breathable, preserved by systems that still functioned after countless. Lights flickered to life as they walked, guiding them deeper into the structure. The walls were covered with writing, translated as they moved, her voice growing more horrified with each passage. These are records, historical records. They speak of a journey across the void, a great migration from a distant galaxy. They say that humanity came from somewhere else. We are not native to Earth. We are not even native to this galaxy. Felt the ground shift beneath his feet, not physically, but mentally. Everything he had ever believed about his species, about his world, was crumbling. Why did we come here? Asked. We were running, Red, running from something terrible, something we created. The records say that in our original galaxy, humanity rose to become the dominant species. We conquered thousands of worlds. We destroyed any who opposed us. But then something changed. A faction within humanity saw what we had become and rebelled. They entered a massive chamber. In its center stood a pedestal, and above the pedestal floated a holographic image of a galaxy. Not the Milky Way, something else, something far away. Civil war continued. The rebels fought against the conquerors. It lasted for thousands of years. When it finally ended, the rebels won. But they knew that the violence was part of them, part of all humans. They could not destroy it. They could only run from it. So they came here, said. They fled to this galaxy and started over. They erased their own memories. They reduced themselves to primitives. They buried everything they had been and hoped that starting fresh would break the cycle. Pointed to the far end of the chamber. Captain, there is something else here. A massive door dominated the wall. It was sealed with locks that seemed to be both mechanical and biological, and beyond it could feel something. A presence, something waiting. What is behind that door? He asked. Read the inscription above it. Her face went pale. Warriors, the ones who refused to change. They were put in stasis rather than killed. Millions of them, preserved as a warning and as a last resort. A last resort against what? Before anyone could answer, the chamber shook. Alarms that had been silent for millions of years suddenly screamed to life. The holographic galaxy flickered and zoomed out, showing something approaching from the void between galaxies. Something is coming, said, her voice barely audible over the alarms. The door began to open, not because they had triggered it, because something else had. Something on the other side had been waiting for this moment. And somewhere in the deep black between galaxies, something ancient stirred, something that had been hunting humanity across the universe since the beginning of time. The quarantine had kept them hidden. But now the quarantine was broken, and the hunters had finally found their prey. The door opened slowly, groaning with the weight of ages. Beyond it lay a cavern of impossible scale, stretching so far that could not see its end. And filling that cavern, suspended in pods of pale blue light, were figures, human figures, millions upon millions of them, preserved in perfect stillness. The ancient warriors whispered, "They are real." The pods stretched in neat rows as far as the eye could see. Each contained a human being, frozen in time, their faces peaceful in their endless sleep. But even in stillness, there was something about them that made skin crawl. They looked like humans, but something was different. Their bodies were larger, more powerful. Their features were sharper, more predatory. "These are what we used to be," said, "before the rebels changed us, before we forgot." A sound echoed through the chamber, not a mechanical sound, a voice. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Children of the exile, you have returned. Spun around, searching for the source. Who is there? Show yourself. The air in front of them shimmered and a figure appeared. It was human in shape but made of light, its features constantly shifting and changing. When it spoke, heard not one voice but thousands, layered on top of each other. I am the echo. I am what remains of those who chose to remember. While your ancestors erased their minds, a few volunteered to carry the burden of memory. We became guardians of the truth, waiting for the day when you would return. What is happening? Demanded. Why did the door open on its own? The echo's form flickered with what might have been sadness. Because they have found you, the ones who have hunted us across the cosmos since the beginning. When you broke through the barrier around your solar system, you sent out a signal that traveled faster than light. They heard it. They are coming. Who, you asked, who is coming? The echo raised its hand, and the holographic display in the chamber changed. It showed the distant galaxy where humanity had originated. And emerging from that galaxy, crossing the impossible void between stars, was a fleet of ships unlike anything had ever seen. In the age before memory, when humanity ruled our birth galaxy, we were not kind rulers. We destroyed anyone who opposed us. We burned worlds and exterminated species. Most of them died without the chance to fight back, but some of them survived, and they evolved. The image zoomed in on the approaching fleet. The ships were organic, grown rather than built. They pulsed with an alien life that made feel sick just looking at them. These are the hunters. They were created by the civilizations we destroyed, a weapon designed for one purpose, to find humanity wherever we fled, to follow us across any distance, to end us once and for all. Why did they not follow us immediately? Asked. It has been millions of years. Because the barrier hid us. When your ancestors sealed this solar system away, they also hid it from the hunters. As long as no one broke through, as long as no signal escaped, we were invisible. But now they know where we are. Finished. His hand rested on his weapon, though knew it would be useless against what was coming. The echo nodded. They will arrive within days, perhaps hours. Their only purpose is the extinction of humanity. They will not negotiate. They will not stop. They will destroy every human being in this galaxy and then move on to the next, searching for any survivors. Looked at the millions of sleeping warriors. Can we wake them? These ancient soldiers, can they fight? They can. They were preserved for exactly this purpose, a last defense against the end. The echo paused. But you must understand what that means. These warriors are from the old days. They know only war. If you wake them, they will fight. But they will also remember what humanity used to be. The aggression, the conquest, the endless hunger for destruction. And they may choose to continue what they started millions of years ago. So we either die or become monsters, Minyu said bitterly. There is another option, the echo said. You could fight without them. Modern humanity. You are different from what we were. You have had millions of years to change. Perhaps you can face this enemy without awakening the old violence. Laughed, but there was no humor in it. Modern humanity cannot even agree on climate policy. How are we supposed to fight an enemy that destroys galaxies? That is the question your ancestors asked themselves 10,000 years ago. They looked at what they were becoming and chose to stop. They believed that humanity could be better. They sealed themselves away to give you a chance to prove it. Walked to one of the pods and looked at the figure inside. It could have been him. Same face, same body. But those closed eyes had seen things could not imagine. Those hands had done things did not want to think about. What happens if we wake them and win? He asked. What happens after the hunters are destroyed? I do not know. Perhaps they will return to sleep. Perhaps they will see the modern galaxy and decide it needs to be conquered again. Perhaps they will look at what you have become and feel nothing but disgust. Or perhaps, said quietly, they will see what we have built, our art, our music, our capacity for love and kindness. Perhaps they will want to be part of it. The echo turned to her. You have hope that is rare. Your ancestors had hope too. It is why they chose this path. An alarm blared through the chamber. The holographic display showed the edge of the solar system. The quarantine barrier, the cage that had held humanity for 10,000 years, was beginning to crack. They are here, the echo said. You must decide now. Wake the warriors and risk becoming what you were, or face the hunters as you are and risk extinction. Looked at his crew, brilliant and grieving but still believing in hope. Minu, loyal to the end, ready to fight with whatever they had. Young and terrified but standing firm. Aggressive and suspicious but devoted to protecting his people. Calm and compassionate, the heart of their little family. And who had searched her whole life for this truth and now faced the weight of it. What do you think? He asked them. Spoke first. We wake them, we fight with everything we have. Survival comes first. And then what? Challenged. We survive but become the monsters our ancestors ran from. That is not winning, that is just losing slowly. Maybe we do not have to choose, said. Maybe we can wake them but show them a different way. Our ancestors chose to change. Why can these warriors not choose the same? Because they were put to sleep before the choice was made, Minu pointed out. They do not know anything about that decision. To them, the war never ended. Had been quiet, staring at the sleeping figures. Finally, she spoke. When I was little, my grandmother told me a story. She said that inside every person there are two wolves. One is good and one is evil. They fight constantly. And when I asked her which wolf wins, she said the one you feed. She turned to face them. These warriors are part of us, the violent part, the dangerous part, but they are not all of us. Maybe the answer is not to wake them or leave them sleeping. Maybe the answer is to show them which wolf we have been feeding. Considered her words. Outside, the hunters were breaking through the barrier. Inside, millions of ancient warriors waited for a command. And somewhere in between was humanity, modern humanity, changed and different but still carrying the potential for both creation and destruction. He made his decision. We do not wake them, not yet. First, we go back to the surface. We tell Earth everything, all of it. The war, the exile, the hunters, the choice. And then we let humanity decide together. If we are going to face this enemy, we face it as what we are now, not as what we used to be. The echo studied him for a long moment. And if you lose, then at least we lose as ourselves, as the people our ancestors hoped we would become. The echo's form flickered and could have sworn he saw a smile. Your ancestors would be proud. They did not believe that humanity could change in just 10,000 years, but looking at you, I think perhaps they were wrong. The barrier shattered. The hunters poured into the solar system, and in a chamber at the bottom of the ocean, a decision was made. Humanity would face its oldest enemy. They would fight with courage and fear and hope and desperation. They would stand together as one species, finally united by a truth that had been hidden for millions of years. And whether they won or lost, they would do it as humans, modern humans, changed humans. The eternal secret had been revealed. Now it was time to write a new chapter. Took one last look at the sleeping warriors. Stay here, he whispered. We will try to do this without you, but if we fail, thank you for waiting. Then he turned and led his crew back to the surface, back to Earth, back to a war that would decide the fate of not just one species, but perhaps all life in the galaxy. The age of hiding was over. The age of truth had begun. And somewhere in the void between stars, the hunters finally laid eyes on the species they had been created to destroy. They saw a small blue planet and a handful of primitive ships. They saw prey. They had no idea what was about to hit them.